I still can't believe I'm writing this. If you had told me a year ago that my own parents would disown me, drag my name through the mud, and then try to sue me over something I didn't even do, I would have laughed in your face. But here we are. My life turned into a disaster so quickly, I barely had time to process it before everything exploded. It all started with a phone call. I was at home, half asleep on my couch after a long shift, when my phone buzzed. The name on the screen made me pause. Emily. My best friend Mark's younger sister. We weren't close. We'd known each other forever, but I could probably count the number of real conversations we'd had on one hand. So why was she calling me? I answered, and right away, her voice was shaky. Hey, I need to talk to you. Something felt off. Okay. She took a deep breath. I'm pregnant. I blinked. Okay. There was a long pause. Then she said it. The words that flipped my entire life upside down. It's yours. I actually laughed. Not out of joy. Not out of nerves. Just pure, dumb shock. Emily, that's not possible. She went quiet for a second. Then, in this weird, rehearsed voice, she said, I know this is a lot to process, but I just... Stop, I cut in. We've never even slept together. How the hell could I be the father? Silence. For a second, I thought maybe she was about to admit this was some kind of joke, some weird misunderstanding. But then she doubled down. You don't remember? I sat up. There's nothing to remember. Emily, we've never hooked up. Ever. You were drinking that night, she said quickly, like she had the whole excuse ready to go. What night? More silence. Then, finally, last summer, after Mark's party. Now I knew she was lying. Emily, I wasn't even at that party. I was in Chicago visiting my cousin that entire weekend. She hesitated, then muttered, maybe it was a different night. Yeah, maybe it was with a different guy. I shot back. I was expecting her to admit it then, to say it was all a mistake. But instead, her voice broke. I just thought you'd do the right thing. The right thing? The right thing? I was so stunned I couldn't even form words. My head was spinning. How do you even respond to something like that? Emily, listen to me, I said finally, trying to keep my voice steady. I don't know why you're saying this, but I'm not the father. And if you actually believed I was, you'd have no problem getting a paternity test. She sniffled. I don't need a test to know the truth. That's when I hung up. I sat there, staring at my phone, my heart hammering in my chest. I told myself that was the end of it. There was no way she could keep this lie going. People aren't that crazy, right? I had no idea what was coming. A week later, the real nightmare started. At first, I convinced myself Emily would drop it, that she'd realize this wasn't going to work and move on. But no. Instead, she doubled down. And worse? My parents found out. I was at work when I got the first text from my mom. Come home. We need to talk. I knew right away something was wrong. My parents weren't the type to send vague messages. I called her back, and she picked up on the first ring. How could you do this? She snapped before I could even say hello. I frowned. Do what? You know exactly what. Emily is pregnant, and she says it's yours. My stomach dropped. How the hell did she find out already? Mom, it's not mine. She's lying. Don't you dare lie to me, she hissed. I didn't raise you to be a coward. That girl is carrying your child, and you're just going to abandon her? Mom, for the last time, I never slept with Emily. This isn't my kid. But she wasn't listening. She was in full righteous fury mode, the one she used when she thought she was morally superior. I can't believe this. I can't believe you would do this to our family. To that poor girl. At that point, I realized I wasn't going to get through to her. You know what? Fine. If she's so sure, she can take a paternity test. That'll shut this down real fast. Silence. Then my mom scoffed. She doesn't need a test. She knows it's yours. I actually pulled my phone away from my ear to stare at it in disbelief before putting it back. Mom, that's not how DNA works. But it was pointless. She wasn't listening. Instead, she hit me with the guilt trip to end all guilt trips. Your father and I are disgusted. We didn't raise you to be like this. If you don't step up and do the right thing, you are no son of mine. I felt like I had been punched in the gut. Are you serious? I asked. You're really going to pick a complete lie over your own son? She didn't even hesitate. If you won't take responsibility, then you are not welcome in this family. And that was it. She hung up. I sat there, gripping my phone so hard my knuckles turned white. I couldn't believe it. I knew my parents were old-fashioned, but I never thought they'd turn on me this fast. An hour later, my dad sent me a text, "Don't come home until you're ready to be a man." That night, I packed a bag and crashed at my friend Jason's place. I couldn't even process what had happened. My own parents had cut me off instantly over something that wasn't even true. And Emily? She wasn't done yet. Not even close. A few weeks passed, and things just kept getting worse. I thought losing my parents was bad enough, but Emily was making sure my entire world fell apart. She told everyone. It started small, whispers at work, weird looks from people at the grocery store. Then, out of nowhere, I got a text from my old high school friend, Jake. "Dude, is it true?" I stared at my phone. True? I asked what he was talking about, and his response made me feel sick. "Emily says you got her pregnant and bailed. That you're refusing to take care of your kid." I actually laughed when I read that. Not because it was funny, but because of how insane this had become. I texted back, "It's not mine. I never even touched her." Jake took a minute to reply. "Are you sure?" That's when it hit me. People actually believed her. It wasn't just random strangers. Even some of my friends started acting different. People I had known for years suddenly had this look in their eyes, like they weren't sure if they could trust me. Like maybe, just maybe, Emily was telling the truth. And she was loving it. She started posting these long, emotional Facebook updates about how some men run from their responsibilities, and some people show their true colors when things get hard. She never used my name, but she didn't have to. Everyone knew who she was talking about. My own grandmother called me, crying, asking why I was doing this to the family. I was losing my mind. No one cared about the facts. No one cared that Emily refused a paternity test. They just heard a pregnant girl crying and picked a side. So I did the only thing I could. I lawyered up. I found a good attorney and told him everything. He listened, nodding along, then leaned back in his chair and sighed. "Let me guess," he said. "She's refusing a DNA test?" "Yep." He smirked. "They always do." We filed for a court-ordered test right away. Emily fought it, of course. She dragged her feet, made excuses, claimed she was too stressed to deal with legal stuff. But in the end, she had no choice. Then, finally, the results came in. 0% probability. I wasn't the father. I held the paper in my hands, staring at those words over and over, feeling this huge mix of relief and pure, blinding rage. Months of hell. Months of being called a deadbeat. Of losing my parents. And now, finally, I had proof. I sent a copy straight to my parents. No message. Just the document. An hour later, my mom called. I didn't pick up. Then she called again. And again. By the time she left a voicemail, I was already done listening. But curiosity got the best of me. I pressed play. Her voice was shaky, almost too emotional, like she was forcing herself to sound more upset than she really was. "Honey, we need to talk. Your father and I, we just want to fix this. Please call me back." I deleted it. They had made their choice. And now, so had I. I thought that once I proved the truth, things would finally calm down. That people would realize how badly they had screwed up by believing Emily. That my parents would apologize. That the rumors would stop. I was wrong. Instead of admitting they were wrong, my parents acted like nothing had happened. Like they hadn't spent months calling me a disgrace and kicking me out of their lives. A few days after the test results, my dad sent me a text. "We should talk." That was it. No apology. No acknowledgement of what they had done. Just 3 words, like I was supposed to pretend the past few months never happened. I ignored it. Then my mom called again. I didn't answer. She left another voicemail, and this time, she really turned on the waterworks. "Sweetheart, we just want our family back. We miss you. Please come home for dinner." I deleted that one, too. They weren't sorry. They weren't even embarrassed. They just wanted everything to go back to the way it was because now that they knew I wasn't the father, they were uncomfortable. They didn't actually care about making things right. They just didn't want to feel guilty. And Emily? She wasn't done yet. She started telling people that I had somehow faked the test, that I had paid off a lab to change the results. I couldn't believe it. I literally had scientific proof that I wasn't the father, and she was still pushing her story. And worse, some people actually believed her. One day, I ran into a woman I barely knew at the gas station. She gave me this disgusted look and muttered, "I hope you're happy leaving her to raise that baby alone." I just laughed, right in her face. At that point, what else could I do? But then my parents crossed the final line. Since I wasn't answering them, they started reaching out to other people. Old family friends, distant relatives, even some of my coworkers. They told everyone they were worried about me, that I was pushing everyone away, and that I was going down a bad path. Then they called my boss. Yeah, my own parents called my workplace and told my boss I was having serious personal issues and might not be mentally stable enough to work. The next day, my boss pulled me aside and asked, "Hey, is everything okay at home?" I could have died from embarrassment. I had to sit there and explain to my boss that my parents were lunatics who were trying to manipulate me into coming back. Luckily, he believed me. "That's messed up, man," he said, shaking his head. "You need to stay as far away from them as possible." And I knew he was right. So I did the only thing left to do. I got a restraining order. When my lawyer filed the paperwork, I expected my parents to explode, to rage at me. But instead, my mom sent one last email. It was long, dramatic, and full of classic emotional manipulation. "How could you do this to us? We're your parents. We love you. Family is forever." She even had the nerve to say, "This is breaking my heart. I never thought my own son would treat me like this." Like I was the one who had betrayed them. I didn't respond. I was done. The restraining order was approved. My parents were legally banned from contacting me or interfering with my job. Emily finally backed off, realizing her lie had run its course. For the first time in months, I could breathe again. But I knew them. They weren't finished yet. For the first time in months, I thought maybe, just maybe, this nightmare was finally over. My parents couldn't contact me anymore. Emily had finally shut up, and I was starting to feel like I could actually move on. But of course, they weren't done yet. People like that never just let things go. A few weeks after the restraining order was approved, I got a text from my cousin, Lisa. "Are you coming to the reunion?" I stared at my phone, confused. What reunion? Lisa told me my parents were hosting a big family gathering, and they were telling everyone I was coming. I felt my stomach drop. They were setting me up. I asked for more details, and Lisa hesitated before telling me what was really going on. My parents had been playing the victims again, telling everyone they just wanted to fix things, and that they had planned this reunion as a way to bring the family back together. But here's the kicker. They never invited me. They just told everyone I had agreed to come, so that when I didn't show up, they could blame me. I could already picture it. A room full of aunts, uncles, cousins, all shaking their heads, talking about how I had turned my back on family, about how they had tried so hard to make peace, but I was just too bitter to forgive. It was a trap. I told Lisa I wasn't going, and she sighed. "I get it, but don't you think it's time to move on?" That pissed me off. Lisa, they disowned me. They sided with a liar over their own son. They tried to ruin my reputation, my friendships, my job, and now they're pulling this manipulative reunion stunt to make me look bad. What exactly am I supposed to move on from? She went quiet for a second. Then, "I just don't want to see the family fall apart." I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Lisa, they already tore this family apart. I'm just refusing to pretend it didn't happen." The next morning, I sent my parents one last email. I told them I knew about the reunion. I told them I wasn't coming. And I told them that if they actually wanted to fix things, they could start by taking responsibility for what they did. No fake invitations. No public stunts. No guilt trips. Just a real, honest apology. They never responded. Instead, a few days later, my dad left me one last voicemail. His voice was cold, controlled, like he had practiced what he was going to say. "You're making a mistake," he said. "Your mother is heartbroken. This reunion was supposed to be a fresh start, but I guess you'd rather keep punishing us." Then, the final nail in the coffin. Your grandparents would be ashamed of you. I felt my jaw clench so hard it hurt. My grandparents were the only people in my family who had ever truly supported me. They had passed away years ago, and now my dad was using them as a weapon to guilt me back into the fold. I deleted the voicemail without responding. The reunion happened the next week. I didn't go, obviously, but I saw the pictures online. Big happy family photos. My parents smiling like they hadn't spent the last year trying to ruin my life. Acting like they were just a normal, loving family. Lisa texted me afterward. It was weird. People kept asking why you weren't there. I think some of them are starting to wonder what really happened. I smirked at my phone. Good. Let them wonder. I didn't need to fight anymore. I didn't need to explain myself. The people who actually cared were figuring it out on their own. So I let it go. For the first time in a long time, I actually felt free. After the reunion, my parents finally went silent. No more messages. No more manipulations. No more pathetic attempts to guilt me back into their lives. It was over. At least, that's what I thought. A few months later, I got a letter in the mail. No return address, but I knew exactly who it was from. I almost tossed it straight into the trash, but a part of me was curious. Maybe, just maybe, this was the apology they had refused to give. Maybe they had finally realized how badly they had screwed up. I opened it. I shouldn't have. It was pages long, handwritten by both of them. My mom's section was full of her usual emotional guilt tripping. We just want our family back. We love you so much. This has gone on long enough. My dad's part was shorter, colder, more direct. We all made mistakes, but it's time to move forward. That was it. No apology. No acknowledgement of what they had done. Just more of the same. Let's forget this ever happened bullshit. I didn't even finish reading it. I tore it up and threw it away. They had made their choice. And now, so had I. I don't know if they'll ever actually understand what they did. I don't know if they'll ever be capable of real change. And honestly, I don't care anymore. For the first time in a long time, my life is actually mine again.